This week's The Rahman Experience is brought to you by the Jacksonville Free Press newspaper, bringing you quality urban news for more than 30 years. Heart SEO, search engine management, optimization, and web building, giving you the tools to make your business soar. And PMP Nutrition and Supplements, all the right things to get your body exactly where you want it to be. It's PMPnutrition.com. It's one of the hottest podcasts in the country. This is The Rahman Experience.
Just like on the earth, through death comes life.
There is something in the atmosphere of every water's college.
What about vaping and the effects on the lungs? It was a symbol of we can.
Rahman was a man of the city, you hear me?
You're inside the Rahman Experience.
It's the Rahman Experience.
The Rahman Experience.
The knowledge that he dropping, most dismiss and make you curious.
And we can't mess this up, cause you know he gon' be furious.
He bring the news to you, cause it's the truth, ain't no stopping it. Say you didn't know, well here's the proof coming from
Rahman Johnson, ain't no straight out of Compton. Duval County with that weight that we rockin'. Now you tuned in to the
Rahman Experience.
Family, friends, what's going on? It's good to hear from everybody. Glad that you are well and that you're tuning back into the experience. And first and foremost, I hope you're staying safe. Okay, I got to laugh at myself for, I always got to share funny stuff when it comes out. So when the global pandemic happened, of course, it was an epidemic initially. And then before that, it was just a virus. And so the interesting part of it is I heard one of the anchors on some station, and I don't remember which one it was, called the virus the novel coronavirus. And I'm thinking, it's something new and different, novel. Knowing that novel is unique and new and different. And so I'm like, no, it's not novel, it's novel. It's the novel coronavirus. Here you go, trying to do it what it do, and it ain't even doing that what you think it is. So anyway, I had to find ways to laugh right now, because with all of the statistics going on around COVID-19, which is dominating the news every day, I mean, it's almost a foregone conclusion that the world as we know it, it's not going to be the same. Not at all. But I thank you guys for tuning in, and thanks for being a part of my experience and my show. And hopefully I'm sharing some information to you that will help you get through, and not to just focus on the bad stuff that's been happening, as some would call it. Right now, by the numbers, COVID-19 has affected more than 2 million people around the world and killed at least 129,000. The United States has even different numbers, with it tracking tens of thousands of people killed right here in the United States. And state by state, city by city, the numbers are even more staggering. But one thing that we know is that Americans, not the ones in government, but that are in just regular positions, are finding ways to make things better. So thank you guys who are doing your part. I know I've been doing what I can to not only provide information, but also a distraction as we go through the worst health crisis in modern history, because that's exactly what it is. Anyway, today's show is going to be a lot of fun. A couple shows coming up. This show today, I think, is going to have 2 parts. So we'll do another part tomorrow. We're actually dropping a second part of the show, which is kind of unprecedented for us. Things have been really unprecedented with the experience. I've been trying to produce great episodes, and I got some great stuff in the can for you. But this show went so long. I actually had to get the author, the guy I wanted on the show. I had to go pick him up and like, hey man, I'm going to take you to grab a bite to eat. And we ended up talking for hours, riding around. But we got some great content, great stories, stuff that has never been heard before. I'm so excited to share that with you this week. And next week, a major professor from Georgia. This chick studies hip hop. But we'll have 2 parts to the show today, and then hopefully this show will drop soon thereafter. So I'm excited. I'm really excited about that. Now, the last show, if you were privy to it, was a live show. That's right. We had State Representative Tracy Davis from Florida on the show, where she created breaking news that I didn't know about. So I was excited to break that she'll be running for the state Senate coming up. So you never know when you're in the experience what stuff you may get or where it will come from. But I'm really just excited to be able to bring it all to you from wherever I am. So knowing that, let's see, what else did I want to talk to you about? There are a few things I wanted to share, but I guess we'll get to those. The cool thing is doing the live show, there's like a live intro. So we'll be going back and forth. Some shows will be live because we'll use like Facebook or YouTube as the platform, and some will be in the traditional format. But regardless, you'll still have great content, great information, and hopefully you'll learn something and you'll share. Yeah. On a personal note, even deeper, I got new glasses this week. Yeah, I know. If I'm excited about getting new glasses, the world, you already know. You already know. Things ain't what they used to be. But I do have another pair of frames. And if you know me, you know I like frames. I wear glasses, contacts. Sometimes I wear no glasses at all, depending on how much I want to strain and squint. So, yeah, hopefully you'll see them. You can check them out over on my Instagram page. You can see me there. And, yeah, we can share some tips. And speaking of Instagram, catch me there on social media at Rahman J, or you can catch me on Facebook at Rahman J Fans. That's Facebook.com/Rahman J Fans, or on Twitter, tweeting all the time at RAHMANJ. All right, coming up, Marc Little. Marc is a 4-time Next Generation Indie Book Awards winner. He's been writing professionally for quite a while, but he talks about the love of his home, New Jersey, and all the stuff that he's done. He's a 3-time Billboard Award DJ of the Year, 3-time Program Director of the Year. He's written the books Faithful Servants, After Obama. He's done, the guy is an amazing author, and you can get a chance to check him. You can catch him over on his website, marklittlewrites.com, to get all the details about Marc Little and pick up his books. But you'll get a chance to get the insight of the man right here on The Experience. But first, the news. The world continues to find a new normal in the wake of the COVID-19 novel coronavirus, and U.S. President Donald Trump continues to antagonize the world. At a recent White House news conference, he announced that he believed that the World Health Organization bungled the coronavirus outbreak and that he was moving to withhold U.S. payments to the organization. Now, although there haven't been any specifics on how the change would happen, most medical professionals say it's a pretty bad idea, especially right now. And in an interesting turn of ecosystem events, there's one zoo in Germany that's considering some drastic measures for the animals at the zoo. In fact, they're looking at turning some animals into food for others. Because of physical distancing guidelines, the Neumünster Zoo has had to create an emergency plan that would help them to cut the cost due to lack of visitors. Celebrities are getting in on the act to do as much as they can to help people in this worldwide pandemic. Amy Schumer donated 2,500 masks and coronavirus kits with Bethany Frankel's foundation Be Strong to a hospital in New York. And Ellen DeGeneres and her wife, Portia de Rossi, announced they will be donating $1 million to the All In Challenge. That initiative raises $100 million for nonprofit organizations. But there are many others across the spectrum that are doing work to make the difference. In fact, Angelina Jolie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and so many others, including Oprah Winfrey, are giving millions to help offer relief around the world. Well, coming up in just moments, we have one of America's hottest new authors. He's also a 3-time Billboard Award DJ of the Year and 3-time Billboard Award-winning Program Director of the Year. Marc Little, he's in the hot seat as the Rahman Experience continues. We'll be right back.
I'm a retired school psychologist, and helping people was my thing. After my stroke, when Meals on Wheels started, I was on the other end of the stick, so to speak. My name is Julius Gaines, creative writer, poet, photographer.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
So here it is, finally, the author we've been trying to talk to so much. You heard about it in the first segment. He is here with us now. Let's welcome Marc Little to the Rahman Experience. Hey, Marc, how you doing?
Yay. Doing fine, Rock.
I'm so glad to finally get you in the experience. We get a chance. I feel like we're on an episode because I really wanted to get you. So we're riding around in a car in your adopted hometown of Jacksonville, Florida. I almost feel like, what's that show that riding in cars with the music?
The James Corden?
One of them, they do this like thing where you ride around and they play music or whatever.
James Corden.
Yeah, with James Corden.
Yeah.
I feel like it's that. Speaking of that, who's your favorite artist? I mean, you were, we gave your bio at the beginning of the show, but you were 3 times Billboard DJ of the Year, so many other great accolades.
3 times Program Director of the Year, too.
I mean, international stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're on your 5th career and you're not Jamaican.
5th career.
And you're not Jamaican. So, and we'll talk about all that. Speaking of music, we started out talking about music. What's your musical artist that you are most inspired by? Because you've actually worked in
several musical genres.
Yeah.
Who inspires you most?
I'll tell you who I let me put it this way, who I enjoyed playing because it always would have me singing in the control room. Al Green.
Really?
I love me some Al Green. In fact, I saw
artists.
a movie just recently that had an Al Green of song in it, and they were millennials. The photograph.
Yeah,
Remember when she was singing?
Yep.
I was in the movie singing, and I know people are probably saying, "What the hell is he doing?" Anyway, Al
There's
Green.
nothing like an Al Green song. He's just like, I was rewatching the other day. You know, Al is one of those artists like Ray Charles.
Yeah.
You know, there's like when you hear more of his like poppy stuff.
Right.
You know,
Right.
there's something about hearing that man talk
Right.
and sing talk or whatever you want to call it. It's something about
Well,
it.
it's
that makes
like
that
when he sings America, and when he starts
man.
when he starts ad libbing, when he riffs, and come on, America.
So we're okay.
America.
So wait a minute, we're okay with Ray Charles's America and
Mhm.
maybe Al Green's America, but Shaka's America was just not. Did that do it
Don't
for you?
even go there because I know Shaka.
I do too.
Ain't nobody.
Did you like her America?
No.
Her national anthem.
Absolutely not.
I thought so. You know, people.
And she did fine until she started at the end, and she started trying to riff or whatever she calls.
So there are people who say
I know that
that
you're
she was
supposed.
a protest. No, they said that it was a protest. That was her. That was her taking the knee to support Kaepernick or whatever. Then there's another faction. I know you're not on Twitter like that, but I know you are on Twitter. There's another faction that said that Shaka was high. So,
Well, I've seen it that way because one time she came to Jacksonville. Right there,
I was right there. I was
no,
there.
You weren't there. No,
I'm talking about the one she was at Metro Park.
No, when she was at. I'm talking when she still sang Rufus.
Oh my God!
And she did
was I
Sweet
born?
Thing.
Okay,
She did
okay.
Sweet Thing, and she sat on the edge of the stage. I was there that night, backstage,
Okay.
with many of my contemporaries, Otis Gamble and several other people who have gone on to glory. And she sat on the edge of the stage, and she said, "I'm not singing anymore." To the crowd, and back in those, I think it was like 8,000 capacity, 10,000 capacity at the old.
She's not singing anymore tonight. Or
That's what she said.
period?
I am not singing more tonight. And she sat on. She didn't like stand in front of the microphone and walk off the stage. She sat on the edge of the stage
And
and
listen-
looked and said to the people looking at her, "I am not singing anymore." Got up and walked out.
And just listen to Rufus. I'm assuming just sat there and listen. Did Rufus continue to play?
Rufus continued to play.
And she just sat there and listened to him like.
No, she got up and walked out. But she made the announcement right at the edge of the stage. Was somebody going to grab her up and say, "Oh, you singing, Mom?" She walks off, but then she comes back 10 minutes later.
And start
they-
singing again.
They started roof. They
And
Sweet
there was
Thing,
Shaka.
and it was Shaka throwing down.
So tell me this. You started out, like, we're going to get to the fact that you are one of America's hottest authors right now. But you started out in North Jersey. Where you were born and raised.
I grew up in Newark, New Jersey.
In Newark. The brick. The infamous brick.
I hate this. That.
Why?
I don't like that.
Tell me why.
Because we're more than a brick city.
Okay.
You know, we're more than a brick city. And I guess, you know, when you come from a city that's only 24 square miles, 26 square miles if you add the Passaic.
So not a big city.
Not a big city at all. But they speak of Newark in terms of big city. When they talk about Philadelphia, they talk about Detroit, they talk about Chicago, New York, they talk about Newark.
You know, I was just in the August Wilson play.
Yeah.
And August referred to Newark, and there's one of the big cities. That
His home city was Pittsburgh.
It was Pittsburgh, yeah.
But here's the deal, Rob. When you talk about Newark, remember, Newark doesn't have any pro football team. Nothing like that in terms of, you know, where you talk about a metropolitan city, but yet we're spoken in those terms, and we take that to heart. Newarkers take that to heart, that we may not have all of that, but guess what? We're just as tough as y'all are. That's what a Newarker is all about. And so when you say brick city, it's almost like, you know, all y'all got is bricks, you know, you got projects. That's what it sounds like to me. Maybe from the outside ear, it sounds different. But to
it
me,
sounds like you're tough, and you can throw everything you want at it, and it ain't gonna hurt you.
Well, it ain't, because we if you look at all the cities that had major riots, we're the only one that has really risen from the ashes and becoming what we are today. Now, sure, LA did it and all, but those are metropolitan cities that had other people working on it. You had the pro football team owners, the pro baseball team owners, the Dodgers and the Lakers and all that. Philadelphia had the Sixers and the Eagles and all that and the Phillies. We just had us. It was our blood, sweat, and tears that brought Newark back.
So how did you get from Newark you're an athlete, obviously always involved in sports. How'd you get from there? What was next after you
went to LA?
School? You were at Weequahic?
Weequahic. When they call it, the proper name is Weequahic, but we call it Weequahic.
Weequahic High School,
right?
Which is very famous.
Philip Roth, the Pulitzer Prize winning author, now gone, is from Newark. Went to my high school, graduated 19 years before.
And didn't Leroy Jones?
Imam Mary Baraka.
Right?
Yeah. His son is the mayor of Newark, Ras Baraka.
That's right. Yeah. All those people. So you're from a community.
Sarah Vaughn.
Yeah, she went to Weequahic?
Eastside High School.
She went to Eastside.
But she went to Eastside High School.
But from Newark. I
did
not realize that.
That's right.
Okay. And your parents were, before we get out of Newark, very political. I remember you talking about Miss Clara and your dad, Mr. Matt. Everybody was which Newark was a political city.
Absolutely.
Sharp James, your mayor.
Ken Gibson.
Yeah.
And I can go further back than that. Irvine Turner, who was the first black elected official in the state of New Jersey.
So how did that inform you? Like you being obviously an athlete and being involved, but seeing your mom and dad involved as they were in politics, how did that inform what would later become a career for you?
Well, what it taught me, first of all, let me give you the skinny on how deep my mother was involved. Whenever we would see somebody strange sitting in our living room around election time, I would always ask my mother, who we supporting for this election? I was like 8 years old. Who we supporting this time out? And they used to deliver the walking around money to the house.
Okay.
I'd come downstairs and be an envelope. And they would say, give this to your mother. She's waiting for it.
Define walking around money.
That's the money you pay people to go out and campaign
and canvas and knock on doors.
And do other stuff.
Okay. Whatever need to be done.
I can say it now because my mother's gone.
Right. Putting out signs or taking them up if need be.
And doing more than that.
Yeah, I got you.
We're talking about the late 50s, 60s, early 60s.
In North Jersey.
In Newark, New Jersey.
Yeah. Okay. So.
And to get to your question, what it did, it showed me the power of organizing. Okay. One of the things that my mother was famous in Newark for was that when we moved into the home that we grew up in 1954, 100th Street, 897 100th Street, right behind Peshine Avenue School, there was a lack of participation in the public Parents and Teachers Association, better known as PTA. And my mother, who strategized moving into the neighborhood that we moved into because she wanted her children to go to Weequahic High School, which was one of the bellwether schools in the country.
Not just the state of New Jersey.
No.
Okay.
And in fact, here's the reputation Weequahic had because the Weequahic was really built for a haven for Jewish people to move away from where they were living in Newark to this particular school. Okay, it was almost like a private school for Jewish people. Other Jewish people, even my friends who I went to school with, would bristle at that notion. However, that's what happened. Mom wanted to move into a place where her children would go to Weequahic. And so when I started kindergarten, 1956, she gets over there, and these people are treating little black boys like they were slaves. I'll tell you what happened to me. I was able to read pretty proficiently for a 3-year-old because I used to read the newspaper all the time. Now, when I say I read the newspaper, I would look at pictures and I would put captions in my mind to the pictures. And that helped me develop a feeling for words. So when I started understanding the words, I was able to read. So when I went to the kindergarten, I was reading.
You were ready.
So, but I would have a friend named Leon Lunsford. God bless the dead, my good friend Leon. Leon would do a lot of talking, but I didn't talk that much. But because Leon was African-American and I was African-American, it was assumed both of us talked a lot. But the truth is, Jan Horowitz, who sat next to me, a Jewish kid, was the one that was doing all the talking. But guess who ended up in the corner?
You.
And Leon.
Right, because you were black kids.
Right.
Yeah.
My mother, I would tell my mama, I didn't do anything. Oh, yes, you did. Yeah, And she finally realized, she said, you know what? Even though, and that was back when mothers were pretty rough in those days. You know, they didn't want their children to be victims of the society in which they were trying to fight their way from. We're talking mid-1950s.
Yes.
So what happened? Well, she said,
which means we had not quite got to I'm Black and I'm Proud.
Right. Yes. We were still Negroes.
Yeah.
So my mother said, the best way I can change this, if indeed my son is telling the truth, is I got to get involved. So she became part of the PTA. Within 3 years, she was president, the first Black president in Newark of a PTA. No, take that back. She was not the first Black. She's the first Black to be on the executive committee of Essex County PTA in 1959. She became president in 1960. At that time, they were trying to redistrict the schools because the schools that in our ward, the South Ward, were becoming very Black. The people of Weequahic didn't want a lot of Black kids, so they were going to try to redistrict them to move them to Southside High School, which was predominantly Black, which was this is the high school where Jerry Lewis went.
Okay.
They were going to get a lot of kids coming from, that were moving into that part of the South where Weequahic was. They would be going to Weequahic. White people in Weequahic didn't want that, so they started trying to redistrict and get us to be going to Southside so they could keep all the Black kids in Southside.
Right.
My mother fought it. The way they tried to say it was that they said our grammar school, our elementary school was overcrowded. We had a big playground next to the school. My mother said, well, if it's overcrowded, make some room. We don't have anywhere to make any room. She said, well, make an addition. She fought and fought and fought to get the addition to that school. They took away our beloved playground. But she was able to fight with some other people and against the NAACP who wanted busing.
To go to another complete part of the city.
And we lived right behind the school, right? You could look from our second floor window into the classroom.
Which was the start of the crazy mess with your busing kids all across the county having to get up whole dark 30 to go.
Right.
When they could just walk around the corner.
Right.
Yeah.
They built the addition to the school. We never ever had to be bussed out of our neighborhoods to go to school. And in fact, nobody busing fell to its knees in Newark.
Was the Jewish community still there, or had they left by this time?
Where
in that area?
Oh, they had left. They had left. Yeah, they had moved what we call the Weequahic section. That was the Weequahic section of the South Ward.
Okay.
But of course, many Black people started moving into the Weequahic section as the years rolled by. When I got into high school and everything. But getting back to your original question, what was the result of my mother's? And my father went along because that was his wife. He really didn't. Daddy wasn't a mobilizer. Daddy was the guy who took us to the park and taught us how to play baseball. Okay. But Mommy was the organizer. It taught me the importance of organizing, but organizing in a very strategic way, not just organizing for organizing. She would march, but it had to be a purpose. In other words, if you marched on an institution or whatever,
picketed
at
the
end of the day, you were going to a place where you were going to start negotiating.
Right.
She didn't believe in, let's go ahead and picket, and then we'll go home and eat some barbecue and greens.
Then we need to push this through, and here's what we want to be our result.
And she always had she always had something that she wanted.
Yeah.
And that's what taught me. And I guess now that I'm older, I get that when I see these quote unquote protests and everything, I'm saying, okay, what's the end game? And people say, well, you don't need to have an end game. You just need to get them told. No.
Gotta have an end game.
But that was my mother. That's what I learned. So that's what I learned as a result of my mother's organizing.
So you were a letterman because you played basketball.
I won seven varsity letters in school. Two for playing soccer, 2 for playing baseball, and 3, I was the student manager of the basketball team, which was number 1, our 10th grade, number 1 in the nation. And the coach wanted me to play basketball. But I said to myself, why should I go through? And he was a tough coach. And he was a winning coach, one of the best coaches in the state of New Jersey, I said, why should I go play basketball, Mr. Fine, all that work? I can just go to games for free, be the manager. So that's what I did.
But it's basketball that took you to L.A., though.
No, baseball.
It was baseball. Baseball. So you went on a scholarship.
Didn't go on a scholarship. Just left Newark and went out. Well, what would happen?
That's kind of funny. You're like, I'm going to get as far the heck away from the East Coast as I can.
I will tell you what happened. There were 3 very difficult things that happened to me in a row. 1967, there was the Newark Rebellion, better known as the Newark Riot. That really, really hit me because I saw the city that I was growing up in flames. And I love Newark. And I couldn't believe it. It was every day for 5 straight days. You see this stuff about people rioting and shooting from the project, from the top of the project. It was driving me crazy. That hit me. Less than 9 months later, Dr. King was killed in 1968. That took me down. And then in 1969, my very best friend was killed in the street in Linden, New Jersey. So those 3 events said to me, you know what? This is not going to work. I can't deal with this. And by the way, that friend and I were going to LA together to play baseball. He and I grew up. He was the pitcher. I was the catcher. I taught him how to pitch. He ended up being an all-city, all-county our senior year. He was one of the best pitchers in North Florida. I mean, North Jersey. And, but he was killed. He was killed in the street and died in my arms. So at that point, I was ready to get out of there, and I went to LA. Yep. And
before we get to LA, Dodgers?
Oh, Mets. And let me tell you a story about that. Daddy, as many black people were in the 50s, was a Dodger fan because of Jackie Robinson.
Yep.
Jackie Robinson brought blacks to Major League Baseball, and it was the Dodgers that did it. So you couldn't find very many black Yankee fans.
Okay.
They were Dodger fans. Of course, the Yankees used to whip the Dodgers all the time until 1955. Yeah. I got a story for you about that one. But anyway, my father was a diehard Dodgers fan. When the Dodgers left Brooklyn to go to L.A., Daddy stopped with baseball. He said, I'm not watching the Yankees. He didn't watch baseball. From 1959 until 1962, when the New York Mets became the New York representative of the National League of Major League Baseball.
Well, other than that wasn't.
Was no Yankees fan. But what's so funny, my late brother, who just passed last December of 2019, was a diehard Yankees fan. Him and my father argued about that forever.
Because in New York, Yankees. It's in your blood.
Yankees, yeah. But
baseball period is in your blood.
Exactly. People don't realize baseball is it. Yeah. I mean, basketball is a big deal. Football is not as big. It's
different though.
But baseball was it. Baseball was it. So to answer your question, I'm a Mets fan. I followed my dad as a Mets fan. 1955, Dodgers played the Yankees in the World Series. My father and mother had moved into the home the winter of 1954, but of course in the winter they couldn't fix up do the painting and everything because of the weather. So of course they did it the next year. It was September of 1955. Dodgers playing the Yankees. I can't remember which game it was, but my mother and I was sitting and watching the game inside the house, black and white TV, old Philco. Daddy and Mr. Hodges were out painting the house on the outside. So all of a sudden, Mommy started screaming, "Oh, Jackie stole it! Jackie stole it!" I'm 4 years old. Okay. Jackie stole it! I'm thinking in my mind, at least in this old age, I'm saying, who the hell is Jackie and what did he steal? So I heard Daddy, "Oh, Daddy," Mr. Hodges, "Daddy, Jackie stole it." I said, "What did Jackie steal?" Jackie stole home.
He stole home. Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, so all of a sudden I start yelling, "Jackie stole it! Jackie stole it!" Jackie stole home against Yogi Berra. And of course, that was the first time that the Dodgers, in fact, the only time the Dodgers beat the Yankees in the World Series. So they were in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite.
The Jackie, so that should be a T-shirt. Maybe Jackie stole it. Come up with the Jackie stole it T-shirt. Yeah. So you get to L.A. You had not thought about being in the music industry. So you're in L.A. You're in school. How did that happen?
Let me take that back. One thing I used to love to do on the playground. We had a small playground after they tore down our big playground. I used to call the games. Play by play. We'd be coming up and so I got into a pattern, and so I liked it. So I started. There was a guy by the name of Jocko Maxwell, who was the sportscaster of Black radio station in Newark, WNJR. And I used to go down to the station and sit around and watch him do his thing. But of course, the disc jockey, back in those days, the studios was so small, so large, I should say. So everything was done out of one studio. So when he finished his thing, the disc jockeys would come in playing the records. So I got a kick out of it. I said, "Oh man, I like this." And in fact, I met Whitney Houston with her mother when Whitney was about 7 years old, maybe. her mother was singing that at that time.
Sweet Inspiration.
Well, she was with the Drinkers.
Yes, the Drinking Sisters. Yeah.
And their manager was one of the disc jockeys, Herman Amos. And Hermes worked
because they're from that area.
They're from Newark.
They're from Newark, but what do you call it? What they call it? Where Whitney was from? They tried to.
Well,
say.
they said she grew up in East Orange. She grew up in Newark.
Yeah,
she grew up in
Latifah, all those. They were saying,
exactly. Yeah. Well, actually, Queen was from Irvington.
Okay,
she played basketball. She's from Irvington. But anyway, so I got a kick out of watching the disc jockeys do their thing. And at this time, there was a man who was a legend. Came from Buffalo, New York, to a radio station called WWRL in New York. His name was Frankie Crocker.
I'm sorry, you said that name wrong.
Frankie Hollywood Crocker. the love man.
The love man. Can you tell I'm an old radio guy that I know?
He was 19 years old.
Are you serious?
19 years old in major market.
Okay.
But he was so good, he came because he worked at WUFO in Buffalo, came down, and UFO was owned by the same people who owned WWRL in New York.
Okay.
So I listened to him more at night because he came on at night from 7 to 10 or 6 to 10, something like that. Because WNJR, they had to turn down the signal, AM radio, so that the signal would be bad at night on WNJR, even though their tower was right there in Union, New Jersey.
Because at night, they had to decrease it so it wouldn't bleed over.
Exactly.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Well, RL had a class
and that
A
was it. Before you go into it, back in the day, because most people won't understand that, I grew up obviously in the radio industry,
right,
with you as one of your kids in radio,
right.
But there were times at night that just like when the TV would go off, radio stations would have to power down,
right.
And it's because those stations would bleed over into other stations because atmospheric changes cause differences in airwaves.
Well, of course, AM was what is it?
Amplitude modification.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that was what had happened with AM stations. You know, some people say AM. I don't even know what AM is. Well, AM was the dominant thing. Yeah. So anyway,
because back in our day, when I started in radio, my mom too, because my mom's in radio with you, you had to have an FCC license to be a jock,
and had to be posted.
Yes, and I think I still have my FCC license.
A little old blue license. That's right. That's right. I got mine over in the Village. In New York. But anyway, so I got caught up in this music thing, and I started, man, this is cool. And then Herman Amos always have his girlfriends calling during the time he's on there. So when records, before he had to open his mic, he'd be talking to his girlfriend. Man.
And notice you said girlfriends, plural.
Yes. Yeah, man. I thought that was cool. I said, oh, and see, I thought I was a halfway decent player back in the day and not playing ball. So I said, shoot. So one time he let me talk on the air. I got back to school. I heard you on the radio with Herman Amos. I said, and that's when
you were hooked.
I was hooked. So when I went to LA, I was already aiming for a career in radio at that time, and of course being on the air as well. So that's how that started. Around 15, 16 years old, I wanted to really play records.
So you're playing records, you're in LA, things are going well for you. How the heck did you get
to Jackson,
back to the other side of the country, and then to the South? Because the South was never on your radar.
South was always on my radar.
How?
I came from a family who traveled during the Great Migration from the South. My mother left the South, left Georgia in 1937. She was 12 years old with her mother. Her father had left the family, and that's a long story. It's too long for me to tell you that. But by the way, it's going to be in my next book, part of it, but it's fictional. And so they left a lot of family down there. Daddy, who got out the service in 1945, went back to his hometown of Anderson, South Carolina, and didn't stay very long because he just didn't want to stay there. He went through a lot of stuff in the service in the Navy. Working in the galley. He was in the war. In fact, his ship got bombed. It was USS Franklin, World War II.
Yes.
USS Franklin was his ship. The ship got bombed. They had over 1,000 shipmates. 752 of them died. He wasn't one of them. And he was trying to help save a bunch of the guys. And here's what happened. 2 hours before it got bombed, he was working in the galley. Two of the people that he tried to save had called him the N-word while he was in the galley about, bringing them their breakfast and all, because they were serving the men. And he tried to save two of them.
The two that had just insulted him and called him the N-word.
Among the other numbers that he tried to save, they had just called him the N-word.
And of course, those two obviously did not.
They didn't make it.
They didn't make it.
Right. So the two of them, their family, well, his family didn't move. They stayed in Anderson. But my mother's family, it was 11 of them, 11 children and their mother. And they moved to New Jersey.
So the South was on your radar.
South was on my radar because I always wanted to go down South. Because my cousins would come up and I would meet them, but I couldn't go back down South.
Because and the reasons you couldn't go is obviously, I'll just call it the Emmett Till effect.
Well, my mother, just to give you a little bit about me, I was an adventurer. Firstborn, I was an adventurer. I wanted to try anything.
Yeah.
And my mother knew that. She didn't want
the South was not the place for a little black boy to try stuff that no one had ever tried before.
And when I would get besides myself, as the old folks would say, about going down South, my mother would pull out the Jet magazine with the cover of Emmett Till. And she said, that's what'll happen if you go down South. Now, she did that for a while. But when I got to be a teenager, I told her, I'm going down South, whether you like it or not. And I talked to her and I apologized years later about it because I really hurt her because she didn't want to lose her child.
Right. And all she could see what Mamie Till was what Mamie Till went through.
Yeah. And I was a roustabout. I talked trash. I wasn't scared of anybody. I'm telling you, I got into a lot of fights, didn't win them all, but I didn't back down from anybody. And my mother knew that. And she said, there's no way you're going down South because it would be ugly.
So how'd you get to Jacksonville?
Finished up my 2 years at Los Angeles City College. Had a scholarship to go to University of Southern California and UCLA. Didn't want to go to UCLA because if they would have found out that I had come out there, because back in those days, education is still basically free in California now, but it was really, really free. If you were able to show that you had a residency, you could go to school for free. And I had some friends who said, I've been living with them. It had to be for a year. They said I lived there and they didn't check anything. So you got in school for free. And a lot of guys from Vietnam were coming back to school. This was 1970. They were coming back from Vietnam going to school. So they weren't doing a lot of checking on that. Well, Ronald Reagan, who was governor at the time, and they were going through some tough times fiscally. He said, well, we're going to find all these people been going to school for free. And we're going to find out if they really, really are residents. And I was one of those people. And we're going to make it retroactive. So therefore, I would have had to pay everything I did for the 2 years at City College. And moving forward, although I would have gotten a scholarship, before I could get the scholarship, I would have to pay for my education I had 2 years prior. So I said, do I really want to stay in school? Do I want to go find me a job? So I left, went back to Jersey, got my little 2-year degree, went back to Jersey, stayed in my parents' home for 2 weeks, got a letter in the mail from Jacksonville, Florida, WRHC radio. And I had gotten so many rejection letters, so I thought it was another rejection letter. I didn't really read the letter fully. I threw the letter somewhere, and my father picked it up. He said, did you read this letter real well? I said, yeah. He said, well, you got a job. I said, I got a job where? He said, radio station. These people saying they're giving you a job. I looked up. There it was. $90 a week in insurance. Now, I never got sick, so I don't know how much what the insurance.
So wait a minute. How did you? Because I never heard you.
I sent out tapes and resumes.
So you did have an air check.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I did that before I left. I'm sorry. I did the air check. Did the requisite air check that we had to do before
for classes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I did one of the best air checks. In fact, I did a documentary in which I won an award from the College Broadcasters of Southern California. I had a trophy for years. I don't know where that trophy is now, but I got this trophy for that. So I was a pretty big dog. And what was interesting, Rahman, was at the same time that I was in school, Brian Gumbel had just broken in at KNBC in LA. And our stars crossed. And I almost got an internship over there, but I was working another station, KFI Radio, as an intern. So had I gotten an internship and been working with Brian Gumbel, who knows what my life would have turned out to be. But anyway, I digress. The thing that really, really hit me was that how tough it was to find a job. And I didn't want to go back home and live off my parents.
Because it was like admitting defeat in a way.
Exactly. And I did not like to lose at anything. Okay? Nothing. Did not like to lose. So I came back and I got the letter and I called them up and they said, yes, we're offering you a job. And when can you get down here? So I told my mother.
And at that time, they didn't do like now, like when you move, they'll give you like a moving.
Oh, please. You better get down there the best way you can.
You know what?
It can be Greyhound, Trailways at the time. Amtrak. Yeah, the Amtrak just started in 1971. Yeah, whatever.
Wow.
Or Hitchhike.
Wow.
But here's the deal. My mother didn't want me to go.
Because it was the South.
It was the South.
Yeah.
Miss Bertha, God bless her soul. I was hot with my mother. Well, you can't go because you don't have any money. She was right. I went downstairs. To Miss Bertha, Mama won't let me go get a job. That's the way I couched it. Politician, right? I didn't. She knew about the South, but I didn't tell her that. So she said, Marky, that was what they called me. You can't. You got a job. She won't let you go. I said, well, it's down in Florida. She said, you know how she feel about those Florida people, because my mother had to think about Florida people. So she might have been all right with maybe Georgia, maybe North Carolina, but Florida, and I can
too far south.
No, it wasn't too far south. It was from people she knew from Florida, New Jersey.
Okay.
Some men who used to beat up their wives. Anyway, I'm not gonna go into that. Okay. But anyway, so she, Miss Bertha said, well, we're gonna take care. How much is it gonna cost you to get? So I had already approximated the cost and everything, taking the airplane down there and whatever. So she went in the back and she brings out about 2 or 3 bottles of coins. And she went into her little purse and pulled out some money. She said, we're going to count out how much we need. And we sat up there and counted out. At the time, I think it's about $100-something to come down here one way. Okay. So she goes upstairs and say, Clara, you don't want Marky to go down south. No, he's not going down south. I'm not, no, he's not going. Well, why? I don't have the money. She said, oh, no, we got the money right here. He can get his ticket tonight. She said, Bertha, and I ain't going to say the word she used.
Because Miss Clara did not cuss. Whatever, man. In my mind, Miss Clara was...
You all can't see the look I just gave him about Miss Clara didn't cuss. We'll move on from that. She went at it with Miss Bertha. And so she said, all right, you don't have to use, I'll just go ahead and get out. He can go. He can go. He gonna learn. And that's when she said that, I always think about that every time I have a down moment. And my mother said to me, you gonna learn.
My mama told me not to move to Florida.
You gonna learn. Anything in life, marriage, whatever.
Yeah, but you still had some of the best experiences of your life.
About it. And we celebrated them together because every time I won a Billboard award, they had a big ceremony in D.C. She was there with me.
Yeah.
She was there with me, my mother. And so that's how I got to Florida.
And both of your children.
Both my kids are still here.
That's right. Floridians, yeah. That's
right. And so she sends me and my brother downtown to a place called Bond's Department Store. I had to go get a suit. She said, you're not getting on the airplane without a suit and a tie. I mean,
it was a different time.
Oh, yeah. So I get my little blue suit, my tie, my white shirt, and they send me off to Jacksonville, Florida.
And you lived in a rooming house.
Lived in a rooming house
on Myrtle Avenue.
Myrtle Avenue.
I remember. I think I know your history better than yours.
Harry Days owned that. I lived across the street from a man named James Argrett.
Yes.
Mr. Argrett took me.
Brenda Argrett's dad.
Yeah, that's right.
Brenda Argrett's dad.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, Brenda went to school with a good friend of mine who I did not know this until maybe 2 or 3 years after I was living over there. One day she said, you from Newark? Do you know him? And I'm not going to say his name.
Yeah.
Do you know him? I said, yeah, I've been knowing. I said, we played baseball together week.
Wow.
She said, that was he was at FAMU with me. She said, you're nothing like him, are you? I said, no. But that's how I ended up. I got my suit and came down here August 14th, 1972. WRHC radio, which actually was WERD when I got there.
Okay.
6 months before that, they changed the name.
From RHC.
Because RHC was the very first black program radio station in the country in Atlanta. And it was owned by the people who owned the station here. They got the call that ERD. I'm sorry, ERD was the call letters in Atlanta. RHC was the call letters of this station here. But the man who owned the station, his sons wanted to get the ERD name, but it was already used up in Atlanta. When the people changed the call letters, I think they didn't change the AOK. I don't think AOK was ERD. Might have been. I don't know which station was in Atlanta.
They were able to grab.
But they were able to grab WERD.
Because that's what I remember before ZAZ.
Right.
There was ERD.
Right. Word radio.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember the color of the station. It was yellow.
So you came in as a jock.
Came as a jock.
And how'd you get from jock to PD?
Ooh, boy, you really getting into it. Okay.
And we'll get back because I want to get to the author.
When I got to the PD thing, this station was run.
And PD is program director, which means you ran the station.
Ran the station. What the records that went on the air, and pretty much was the person that people called when stuff was raggedy.
Right. And this was a different time because
much different.
There was no such thing as Playola and Plugola. At least not.
Oh, yes, it was.
No, what I'm saying is officially signing a thing. Like when I went into radio, you had to sign. No Playola, no Plugola.
Oh, yeah. But they came up with the pledges. The pledges actually started through a guy by the name of Alan Freed, who was a disc jockey in Cleveland, who was actually the father, they call him the father of rock and roll. He did a lot of payola. But he got convicted. He got convicted at time because of what he did.
They were serious when I started, like, no Playola or Plugola.
They did have a form that you would have to sign that said that you would not accept payola plug, because back in those days the playlists weren't controlled as they are today. Yeah. You have a big bin of records and say play the record. You
spin it what you want.
You spin it, yeah.
There was a guy who we know who was famous for it. His name was Don Smith, the incredible pressure cooker. And like I said, I grew up I think I'm in like a hybrid. Right. The end of a certain kind of golden era of radio, and then when I came in radio, it was different. And Don Smith used to do something called double shot.
Oh yeah.
And then he would do a triple shot. If it was a song he really liked, right, and there was a drop, he plays like double, 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 shot, 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 shot.
Right.
And would play the song back to back and sometimes back to back to back, which is not something that would ever fly today.
Well, we used to do it, but of course he formalized because that Don was was an air personality. Yeah. By the way, I gave him
God rest his soul.
I gave him his first job.
Really?
At WRD.
Was he called the incredible pressure cooker when you hired him?
No, he just called himself Don Smith. He got to pick up the pressure cooker from.
You were with Ron Funky Fentley.
No.
Ron wasn't with you?
I was before Funky Fentley. The guys who were with me at ERD when I first started ERD was a guy by the name of Eddie T, who ended up going to South Carolina and ended up in New York at WBLS for a minute. And a guy named Charles D. He was a morning guy. I see him every once in a while over at Walmart. He was I see him
still around,
but he wasn't that good with this jock. He was a nice guy, but he wasn't that good.
What about Hey Now? Was he around?
Hey Now, Larry Brody. That's another story. Larry worked it because Larry's a white guy.
He's a white guy. Is he really white though? He's like Arab, isn't he?
He's Jewish. He was Jewish.
Jewish, okay.
Big time Jewish.
Because you're his daughter's godfather. Yeah. And we never knew for years growing up. The guy's name on the radio, Hey Now, Larry Brody.
Larry Brody.
And no one knew he was not black. I'm not going to say he was white, but no one knew he was not black.
So, but the powerhouse in Jacksonville was WOBS as far as black people were concerned.
That's where Willie Martin was.
Exactly. Captain Groovy. And over there, they had the jocks over there. They had Captain Groovy, Willie Martin. They had
the original Flying Black Ace.
Right. They had Berkey B.
These names that y'all used to have back in the day.
They had Berkey B. They had Nat Soulfinger Jackson. They had real.
You keep messing up the names, Mark.
But
it's Nathaniel Soulfinger Cooking Jackson.
I gave him all that. He was just plain old Soulfinger.
Mark, where did these names come up that you guys had back in the day?
If you went all across the country, every market had a Soulfinger.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I never knew that.
Yes. Every market had a Soulfinger.
I thought that was his proprietary thing.
I'm not saying he stole it from anybody, but everywhere you went,
there was a Soulfinger.
There was a Soulfinger or some kind. Like when I was in L.A. and at the KGFJ was the big station when I was in L.A. And there was a guy by the name of the boss, Tom Cross. The boss, Tom Cross, on your radio. KGFJ. And then Roland Bynum, who used to work the midday, and his name was, you're strolling with Roland. I love you. I mean, I can do some stuff. Now, don't get me doing the platter chatter up in here, brother, because you will never get another piece of this radio on this interview.
Oh, my word. I mean, we did some wonderful things back in the day.
It was fun. It was, but the thing about
I'm kind of glad I didn't get into the part where y'all had the names. I don't know.
Oh, the names are too much. And when I came to Jacksonville, I was only 20 years old.
Right.
And I just became popular overnight. And I was at the second station in Jacksonville, but I was real popular. Mark L. You know Mark L? Oh, yeah, he came by my school. And I was a community. I was all over. I'd be at the parks. I'd be everywhere. And they'd see me. I was all over the place. And so that's how my popularity grew. So what happened, and then I had a couple of stops. I went to New Orleans for 6 months because I got sick of ERD. They pissed me off, and I had a friend in New Orleans that said, come on over here. And I went over to New Orleans, stayed there for about 6 or 7 months, came back to Jacksonville
to work,
to come to WPDQ. WPDQ, 9 months before I came back, had switched over to R&B, as that what they were calling it back then. And Otis Gamble, who was the program director, hired me. I was doing midnight to 6. Of course, we're actually doing midnight to 4 with popular music, and then 4 to 6 with gospel. And I used to call myself the Bishop. And I tried to change my voice. People say, "Oh yeah, does Mark L still there?" And that's still me, right? I said, "No, he left. He left. This is the Bishop."
Y'all had so many tricks back then.
Real tricks, real tricks. But that was, and so when all that went down, we was there for 2 years, and then what happened? One of the top 40 stations, that actually was what they call middle of the road, MOR, actually switched was getting ready to sell, and the owners of WPDQ of WOBS bought WPDQ. And
that's when you met my mother.
1975, when she actually started entertainment news. Entertainment news in 1976.
Yep. That was the year I was born.
Right. Yeah. You were little, yeah. And so she was there, and that's when
y'all kind of took me up under your wing and forced me into this business we call radio.
Yep. In fact, I think your mother drove a Volkswagen that time.
I think she did.
And she had her license plate had your middle name.
Kareem. It was a Kareem. Yep.
And so, I mean, it's such a
But it was a family. You guys were the uncles, because I was the station baby.
Right.
Who knew that I would come up in the business, but y'all were like my uncles.
Well, and we did, and a lot of us didn't know the depth of your mother's education as what she was teaching you. We just knew her as Ida.
Who was on the air.
Ida Ross on the air. We didn't know, I didn't know Ida. I mean, some people knew Ida better than others. But I didn't know the depth of Ida.
That she actually had degrees and
learned
and all.
But we knew she had a great. Because I remember when there was a young lady who worked at the station, who she came with me. She said, "I didn't know Ida was from Jacksonville. She speaks like she's from New York."
She did have
She had a great voice.
She had an amazing voice.
Ida Ross, Entertainment News.
And the funny part was, I really forgot about it till Mom passed away. And you and I, we talk often. You're like a dad, mentor. But Arthur was like my uncle, Mom's brother.
Right.
And he was telling the story at her funeral. Remember the story he told about
Prince,
mm-hmm. Rick James,
right.
Barry White.
Right.
So these people would call the house for Ida.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, "Oh, hey, Mr. Barry."
Yeah.
It's Barry White.
Yes.
And I'm talking to him on the phone.
Yes.
And Prince, who spoke to no one, did an interview with my mother.
Did backstage when he was
would stay in touch with her.
Yes.
And these were just, to me, I didn't realize that your mother is down with Prince. Mm-hmm. Who was the other person? Oh, Auntie Della
Reese.
Remember before Jacksonville had the jazz festival,
right?
It was called Mayport and all that jazz.
That's right.
And so we would go down there, and Auntie Della would always come with food. She would cook and have greens. I mean, the woman could cook.
Uh-huh.
And she would say, "Where's the baby? Ida, you brought the baby?" These were, and as an adult, and Arthur told some of the stories at the funeral, and it really was a magical childhood.
Yeah.
That I didn't even know. And I guess there was no way I could have appreciated it at the time.
No, none of us did. In 1974, the OJs, they came to Jacksonville on my birthday. Okay. And I was backstage because all the DJs used to, basically back those days we could hang backstage because you didn't have all these over the top promoters. Promoters were pretty much down to earth, and they people you knew. Yeah. And many times national promoters would hire local promoters in Jacksonville to do the groundwork, right? Yeah. And that's back in the days when you could, especially in the South, when you play a commercial, you play the headliner's record right after the commercial. You do that today, Lord have mercy, doggone corporate office will be, text you. You should not have just heard that. Where'd you hear that? Well, I heard it on the computer. Hey. But anyway, so we were talking back there, and I forgot. I think it was Funky Larry Jones who said to said to
Funky Larry Jones.
Funky Larry Jones. I mean, he was good though. He ran a tight board. And for those of you who don't know what a tight board is, that means between commercials and records, you found very little what they call dead air.
No dead air.
So anyway, so he mentions to Eddie Levert. He says, "Yeah, my man Marc Little, he's got a birthday today."
Because the OJs were in town.
They were in town.
Concert. Okay.
So we're up there, and then they come on stage and say, "Before we get started, I want everybody in this audience to say just a quick snip of happy birthday to WPDQ's Marc Little." And I said, "What?" And he led the song. It was just they didn't do the whole song. Happy birthday,
but he
brother Marc Little.
In OJ style.
Happy birthday to you. That's what I grew up in.
Yeah.
That personality, touch the people kind of radio.
And what you guys taught me that it was not, I remember Willie created Come Together Day, and obviously I was...
1973, first Come Together Day at Myrtle Avenue Ballpark.
All right.
Now JP Small Bar.
I was way behind you guys, obviously, but I remember I was taught that because I had the mic, there was a responsibility that came with that bully pulpit, so to speak. So you had a responsibility to give back to the community.
Yep.
You had a responsibility to be better, to do better. So it wasn't just like you get on the air and be stupid.
Right.
But you're supposed to inform.
Right.
Have a good time.
Right.
But you got to lead the people with something.
That was our mantra.
Yeah.
And there's still some people who do it. They do it a different way. Remember, I'm approaching 70 years old. So some of the things that they do say on the Breakfast Club, I get it from a point of view of the time
of this generation.
But there's some things that I hold true, and one thing I hold true to is when you're going to talk about something, you do your research.
Yeah.
You don't spout out about something and saying somebody's this or somebody's that, and then you don't have anything to back it up. That bothers me when I hear, say, what are they, Angie? What is the lady's name that's on there with him? Is it not Angie? I'm thinking
Martinez.
Angie Martinez.
Yeah.
And then Charlemagne the God.
And Charlemagne was on this show, on but he really does have a heart because he's ironically from South Carolina.
He's from Moncks Corner.
Yeah.
He was in South Carolina when I was programming a station in South Carolina in 1984.
Really?
Yes, but he was a kid. But I knew his people. I knew his peoples. I knew his peoples. Yeah, I knew his. He had an uncle of an uncle or cousin of somebody who owned a club named AJ. And AJ used to always have me come out there and MC shows and stuff. This was in 1984.
He wasn't even thinking about radio at the time.
I didn't even know, but when I heard him talk about Moncks Corner and everything, I knew exactly what it was.
Talks about it and I, honestly, I didn't know. I mean, when Charlemagne was on the show, I really didn't realize because if you listen to him, I don't hear South Carolina.
It was interesting because the guy who hired me.
Well, that's our show for today. Thanks so much to Linton Meggie, Kenneth Arnold, and the entire team that brought this show to the realization. Check back tomorrow for part 2 of my interview with Marc Little about his amazing life and career. And of course, where you can buy his book. The Experience continues. It's Rahman Johnson. I'll see you next time. And hey, be safe out there. Love yourself and everybody around you. We'll talk soon.
Yo, MIGRANT.
It's your boy Lynch. You already know what time it is, man. You know you hear them birds calling. Listen. It's the Rahman Experience.
The Rahman Experience.
The knowledge that he dropping, most dismissive, make you curious.
And we can't mess this up, cause you know he gon' be furious.
He bring the news to you, cause it's the truth, ain't no stopping it. Say you didn't know, well here's the proof coming from
Rahman Johnson, ain't no straight out of Compton. Duval County with that weight that we rockin'. Now you tuned in
to the Rahman Experience.